Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Henry Buitrago, Creative Coordinator at the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce. I just want to let you know that this event is going to be recorded for sharing later on social media. Please remember to add your name or company name on your Zoom profile, and make sure you have your video on and your microphone mute. When you have a question for the panelists, please send it directly to Margot Orr or Jason Ebig. If you are having any technical issues, please reach out to me through chat. Now, to introduce the panelists for today, here's the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce CEO, Jason Ebig.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Ebig. I'm CEO of the Greater Saskatoon Chamber. The Chamber team and many of you are participating today from Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. As a chamber, we are committed to growing a Saskatoon rooted in shared success and respectful relationships and true reconciliation. And so if you're joining us from other parts of the province today, a warm welcome to you to Saskatoon and Treaty 6, and thanks for being here. And of course, a special thank you to today's Power Breakfast sponsor, Western Economic Diversification. Your support means the world to us, and we're very proud to have you as a partner. So with that, let's get started. About a year ago, business leaders were thrown into uncharted waters with the onset of COVID-19 in Saskatoon and Saskatchewan. Virtually overnight, managers had to consider a dizzying array of risks and challenges, all in an effort to keep their employees, clients, and customers safe while trying to stay open. New procedures and protocols were developed at warp speed, and where there wasn't a policy to guide them, new policies were written and quickly implemented. Fast forward to today, where COVID-19 vaccine is starting to roll out across the province, and we can see the shore, but we're not out of the waters yet. With the arrival of vaccine, a set of new challenges has emerged around vaccination in workplaces. Specifically, can employers require their employees to take the vaccine? How best to respect and respond to employees who choose not to take the vaccine for personal or medical reasons? How can we balance the rights of employees and responsibilities of employers in all of this? And how can we ensure that whatever approach is taken, we don't create unrest or division in our workplaces? These are the vaccine questions that are vexing business leaders who want to protect their workers and customers, but avoid the legal battles and accusations of discrimination from those who choose not to get vaccinated. So to that end, we've assembled an all-star panel to share some insights and help us needle in the right direction. First, we have Aaron Forenwald, who's a Senior Director of HR for Nutrien here in Saskatoon. Aaron oversees the HR business partner team in the Potash business unit led by Ken Seitz, EVP and CEO of Potash here in Saskatoon. The team partners with site leadership on HR matters, union management issues, and recruitment, as well as implementing compensation, organizational development, and other initiatives at site. George Green, he's a partner with McKercher LLP here in Saskatoon. George is a highly motivated, responsive, and results-oriented lawyer. He aims to provide the most practical and cost-effective solutions for his clients. George practices extensively in the areas of employment law, debt recovery, and criminal defense. George is the chair of the firm's labor and employment law practice group. Matthew Say is CEO of Morris Interactive here in Saskatoon. Matthew co-founded Morris Interactive in 2003 and leads the growth of the consulting firm today. Operating on the core value that investments in people and relationships is really what drives growth and success, the firm provides consulting and advisory services in human resources, leadership development, strategic planning, among other areas. Finally, Tara McEwen, who's Chief Employment Experience Officer at Connexus Credit Union and a current director on the Chamber board. Tara is a collaborative leader who has spent the last 20 years working for various credit unions in Western Canada, all with their own distinct culture and business strategy. With a background in sales, operations, and member relations, Tara's current focus is helping Connexus provide an industry-leading employee experience. So thank you to the four of you for joining us today. As we talked earlier, just before we got started, each one of you brings a different perspective to this whole question and conversation we're going to have this morning, from the legal to the employee experience, HR, and other. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and sharing whatever insights and ideas and advice you have for us this morning. So George, why don't we start with you? As the legal beagle on this panel, all eyes are on the question, which is really, can employers require their employees to take the vaccine? And specifically, what are management's rights on this front? What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Jason. I think the first question that has to come up to an employer is that can you even ask the question of an employee of whether they've had the vaccine or not? And that's going to depend on the nature of the workplace. I would certainly say on the highest end of the spectrum are healthcare and other frontline workers who work with elderly and vulnerable people. That's where social distancing is all but impossible. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got employers who have their workforce permanently working from home and remotely. That's the lowest end of the spectrum. So, obviously the healthcare people are the highest end. They would have the most right to ask their employees whether they've had the vaccine. On the low end, where everyone's working from home, I would say an employer does not even have the right to ask their employee whether they've had the vaccine. So, of course, the answer is, like every lawyer is going to tell you, is it depends. And, there's a balance to be maintained here, because every employer has a duty under occupational health and safety legislation to protect the health and safety of its workers. And to do that, you do have an interest in whether your employees have been vaccinated. Now, if you're to ask the question of the employer, have they been vaccinated, any medical information the employer obtains must be carefully stored and only used for its intended purpose in accordance with the applicable privacy legislation. So to answer your direct question, can employers require their employees to take the vaccine? The answer is it depends, and the answer is likely not unless you're in the highest spectrum of healthcare providers working with the vulnerable. Every case will depend on its own facts, but for most employers, the answer is going to be probably not.
And so, just even touching on that question, then I guess the right to ask is also a bit problematic, as you've sort of outlined. So how can an employer, I guess, create an environment where customers, employees, other employees, the workplace generally is safe and can do their due diligence to make sure that they've done what they need to do to protect everybody in that space?
Well, I think education is the key. I think employers want to do all they can to provide education, provide encouragement of their employees to be vaccinated. I think putting out an advertisement that every one of my employees have been vaccinated, again, that's private health information. So if you don't have the consent of every one of your employees, I think you're stepping into a bit of a minefield there. So, as soon as you start treating employees different, whether they've been vaccinated or not, now you've crossed the line into some legal issues you're going to have to consider. So, are employees going to want to simply wash their hands of any employee who doesn't get vaccinated and simply say, look, if that's a termination without cause, I'm going to pay the severance and I'm going to get out of here. And then I can advertise if I have consent of every one of my employees that have been vaccinated. But you've got to be aware of human rights. There are legitimate reasons why employees may not want to be vaccinated. And that can be religious beliefs or a disability. For example, people that are immunocompromised or have allergies. A disability is a protected ground of discrimination in Saskatchewan. So employers are going to have to consider the reasons why an employee may be refusing. And then you're going to have to accommodate that disability. And such accommodation is going to depend on the workplace. Can you give that employee a leave of absence while the pandemic is still going on? Can you give them the direction to work from home? Can you ask them to mask or take regular COVID tests and disclose the results? Again, these options are going to depend on the nature of the workplace. So at the end of the day, the blanket advice that I'm giving clients is to do everything they can to encourage employees to get the vaccine, provide lots of education, but beware of these human rights landmines and consult with your legal counsel when these issues come up, when you've got a refusal, you know, an employee saying, I'm not telling you anything, or when you have an employee say, hey, unless I know everyone's been vaccinated, I'm not coming to work. That's where you're going to need to talk to your HR, talk to your lawyer, and deal with every case on its facts.
So let's talk about that. Where, in your mind, George, is that sort of legal line between encouraging employees to take the vaccine and being seen to be pushing too hard? How far does that go? Obviously, and I think it's fair to say, most employers, most business owners would have a vested interest in having their employees take the vaccine. Encouraging could come across as being pushy. Where's that legal line from your point of view? Where can we avoid sort of stepping into hot water here?
Absolutely, it's a good question. Right now, everyone has to mask. Everyone has to obey these social distancing guidelines, and there are no exceptions. So what's going to happen is, as people get vaccinated and the government reduces restrictions, an employer may have the desire to say, okay, I'm going to start treating employees that have been vaccinated different than employees that have not been vaccinated. That's where you cross the legal line. That's where, if you are going to take such a position that you're going to treat your employees differently, I strongly encourage that you contact your legal counsel before you implement any such policy that treats one employee different than another on the grounds that one's been vaccinated and one has not.
Mm-hmm. Just a question through the chat here, and it's going to be a common one. What about the right of people to feel safe at work? We're talking a lot about the rights of individuals to refuse on whatever grounds make sense. But what there is everybody else that also has a right to come to work and expect a safe and healthy environment. You've talked a little bit about doing whatever possible to accommodate those specific individuals, those specific cases. I guess my question is, how widely could you talk about doing that in individual cases to put everybody else's minds at ease that there is a strategy and approach for those individuals?
Well, I think what's going to have to happen is this is going to have to be taken to occupational health and safety. There's going to be an employee that's going to say, I refuse to come to work because it's unsafe. And then what you're going to have to do is both the employer or the employee either can initiate the process, go to occupational health and safety, and they are going to send an investigator to determine whether your workplace is safe or not. That's what we're going to have to see as lawyers, is how occupational health and safety deals with that. And it's going to depend on the workplace. Are people working shoulder to shoulder in an assembly line where social distancing is impossible? Or are they working somewhat far apart? So, is the workplace safe? That's going to be answered on its own set of facts. And we're eager to see how occupational health and safety is dealing with this. Right now, I have not seen too many instances where occupational health and safety has ever shut down an employer. At worst, all I've seen them do is say, what we'd like you to do is put A, B, and C in place. The employer puts A, B, and C in place, and then occupational health and safety says, we deem this to be a safe workplace. Your employee has to report to work. It is not an unsafe workplace. So that is how I see those types of instances being dealt with. And it will be a fluid situation as the vaccine rollout moves forward.
Yeah. So just maybe a final question to you from me. What are, in your mind, if we had to put together some sort of HR policy to, sort of codify this approach somehow, sort of put this to paper for, consistent application, but also to avoid some of the legal risks that you've identified around all this, what would you suggest sort of be in that HR policy? What are the essential elements of what that should read and look like?
Well, I'll caveat my answer by saying in most circumstances, having a solid HR policy is key. It is proactive. It is exactly what every employer should have in order to say, no, I'm not treating you different than anyone else. Here's our policy. here's our Bible on how we do this. However, COVID-19 and the vaccination policy right now, the vaccination rollout, this is one of those rare instances where I'm not recommending any of my clients put a policy in place just yet. This whole situation is still so fluid that I would not recommend an employer reduce their position in writing on this, because it's likely going to be constantly changed as the vaccine rollout proceeds and government restrictions are reduced. Again, my recommendation, do all you can to educate and encourage your employees, consult with your HR department and legal counsel, and deal with every case on its own individual facts and get some help and guidance on this. I know that is the opposite of being proactive, but considering how fluid this is, and this is a special case, this is what I'm recommending my clients do, is not reduce this in writing to a policy. Every client's different, and there may be lawyers that disagree with me, but that is my advice right now, is I have not recommended one of my clients yet put a policy down in writing.
Okay. Interesting. Wow, this is just so unprecedented, isn't it? It's just unbelievable that we're in this kind of situation where we're not only having to break all of our molds in terms of how we operate, but also how we approach, employee policies in our workplace. It's incredible, really.
Well, and Jason, like, one of the last things you want to do is put a policy in place and then have the government come down and say that policy is illegal.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. Question from the chat, just again, back to this idea that, there is the rest of the workforce that also has its concerns and rights and considerations. If somebody does not want to come to work because not everyone has been vaccinated, can the employer require them to work if they do not have, protected grounds like a disability or some medical reason to not return? And then I guess is the next step for the employee to claim an unsafe workplace, which now opens up a whole other can of worms for that employer or business owner.
I would never advise an employer to terminate an employee for refusing to come to work on an unsafe work allegation without OH&S coming to the workplace, doing an investigation and determining the workplace is safe. So A has to come before B. You will want to get a ruling from OH&S that your workplace is safe before you take any disciplinary action against the person for refusing to come to work on grounds of safety.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Aaron, let's turn to you. We're talking about workplaces. You've got a giant workplace. You have a network of workplaces that you're responsible for, all of the sites that Nutrien operates here in the province. We know that safety is priority one at Nutrien, and we also know, your company was the first to come out publicly with a pro-masking policy for all employees and suppliers and contractors. So you have sort of dived into uncharted waters before. Let me ask you, how is Nutrien approaching this issue of vaccination and promoting vaccination in all of your workplaces?
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone, for letting me join today. I think the first key for us is that we are not requiring anyone to, and we've made that public to all of our employees through town halls with Chuck Magro globally. So it's not just within Saskatchewan, it's our entire company. We're not requiring anyone. The one thing that's fortunate for us is we're a large enough company that we have resources like occupational health and safety nurses that work with us and on our teams. So, one of the things, and George talked about education, I think it's the absolute key to success here, getting the majority of employees vaccinated. So we're going to be doing a large campaign. Our nurses will likely be recording a video that can be shared and posted for all employees to just learn more and get educated on the benefits of the vaccine. We don't know for sure what the long term looks like for when we can sort of call off the dog, so to speak, on all the protocols like wearing masks and social distancing. So until we know when that is, that's another piece of work that we're doing, is maintaining all of those protocols so that employees that don't want or choose not to get vaccinated know that their coworkers are still, even if they haven't been vaccinated, they are following those protocols, which we've been living with for 54 weeks now, I believe it's been. So that's another I think a key piece for us that we want to maintain our protocols. What we're going to do is hopefully we can work with the government and Sask Health to allow us to provide, and they're actually talking to us about that, providing access to the vaccine through our nurses at site. Or what we are talking about is maybe working with our communities where we operate, like Lanigan, Rocanville, to not only offer a clinic where our employees can get vaccinated, but also help with the public plan to get the public vaccinated as well, and make it easy for everyone to get this as quickly as possible. So that's another way we're trying to promote this with our employees, is just as easy as possible to get them the vaccination. George commented on, we don't have the right to ask, so we're going to have a voluntary process for people to disclose. But what I find interesting, and George, you commented that employees don't, or we don't want to have policies that violate things and we don't know where we're headed. Well, a great example to me is we created a policy that said employees can have up to 4 hours to go get vaccinated. So it's another way we're encouraging. However, now we've got this legislation that just came out last week that says employees are allowed 3 hours. We don't know for sure what that means. Does that fly in the face of our policy? How do they marry together? So to me, that's another good example why I agree with you that having policies might just need to be changed every day because of the ever-changing landscape of this. So in the end, we're gonna encourage people as best we can. Ken Seitz on our global town, or our Potash town hall, very much encourages people, but we know that we also have to respect the people that choose not to have the right to do that, and we'll respect that, knowing that, as you described, there's going to be situations in the workplace where we're going to have to deal with some potential, I'll call it employees' difference of opinion with each other on who should and who shouldn't get vaccinated.
Yeah. So. What's your early read? I mean, obviously, don't share any state secrets here, but what's your early read of sort of the general sort of mood or attitude of your workforce towards all of this? Are you starting to are you getting some early questions around this, early concerns around this, or is it frankly too early to tell?
It's a little early yet, but I think the general mood is people are just wondering when can we get our vaccination, and is the company going to help provide that, etc. So I mean, everybody's watching what's the Sask Health guidelines on we're an essential service, which we're very happy to have that status. But does that mean we get first access? The answer, I guess, is no. It's going to be done on age in this province, whereas some of the jurisdictions we work in the U.S., for instance, some of the states, we did get first access. So we've already had clinics at Aurora, North Carolina, our big phosphate plant. There's a number of employees that have been vaccinated because of the different landscapes of what the provincial and state jurisdictions are doing. But overall, I think the majority of employees are just looking forward to getting an opportunity to get the vaccination.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about sort of the HR policies. I mean, George has made the observation, and it makes a lot of sense that fluidity and flexibility right now is what I think everybody needs. But you work in a unionized workplace. You have collective agreements you have to honor, and you have to work with your labor partners to sort all this out. Just give us a sense of how you are sort of approaching this in a more formal way. Are you developing specific HR protocols or policies around this? What does that look like in your world?
We have not yet. I'm glad George made the comment he did, because if he had said, "Oh yeah, most employers have these all laid out," I'd have been panicking because we do not. I actually think the most important policy that we have going forward is our respect in the workplace policy. I think there's going to be a lot of people that they're potentially for a lot of disagreements and arguments, shall we say, that can escalate between employees. And we need to keep focusing on our, the last year we've adopted our safety, our SHE group has adopted a culture of care as their sort of tagline, but it's more than a tagline, it's real, that we want to have a culture of care in our workplaces. And I think this is a great example where it has to come into play. We need people to respect each other. There's going to be, as George said, many reasons why a person chooses not to get vaccinated. In fact, as you said, we don't even have the right to know. So we are asking people to voluntarily disclose that they are vaccinated or not, but they don't have to do that. In fact, probably the only way we will know for sure is if a person says, well, I want my, whatever this 3 hours that they can access. If they say, well, I want my 3 hours, I guess, okay, well, if you want your 3 hours, that must mean you're going to get vaccinated. So one of the questions we have, do we have ability to have proof of that? So that is probably the only HR policy that I'd say we're talking about is, what can we say as far as what we can ask for proof that you have been vaccinated? And then if we get that, what do we want that for, other than, we're not going to publicize it and put up a bulletin, okay, here's the ones that have been, here's the ones that haven't been. But people know each other very well, and they'll know. So that's where to me, it comes back again to this respect in the workplace. And I think we need to go slow and maintain our protocols. I know people are tired of wearing masks, and it's underground, your glasses fog up, all those issues, but we've been dealing with them for a year now. And I think we just need to continue to just be diligent in keeping people safe through those protocols.
George, just sort of back to you on that one. What about, requesting or encouraging verification or proof of vaccination? To Aaron's point, it's not like anyone would be doing anything, inappropriate with that information, but it would be helpful for an owner or a manager to have some sense of what percentage of their workforce actually was inoculated from COVID-19. How do you approach that? Can you approach that?
I think that's a live question. And before I answer the question, can you, I'd ask the question, should you? Let's talk about even should you. So an employee wants their 3 hours off. They say, I'm going to get vaccinated. I think, at least in my office, because I've had that direct question asked to us, and our office is not going to do that and ask for confirmation. I think we're going to trust our employees, because again, once you collect that personal information, now you've got duties to store it and use it properly, and only for the limited purpose. So even if you gather that information, it's only for the limited purpose. So can employers ask that? I think it's a live question. The legislation on the vaccination leave does not specifically set that out. So the answer is a bit of an unknown. And again, someone's going to have to try it. I'm not sure the privacy commissioner would allow it. If they said, look, it's my employers asked for proof of vaccination when I took my 3 hours off, my gut tells me I don't think the privacy commissioner would allow you to demand that information. I still think it's public. It's the same thing as voting leave. How many employers, when they give leave to have their employees go vote, ask for some type of confirmation? Hey, did you go vote? I just think it's a bit of an administrative nightmare. The amount of work that you're going to put some of your staff in order to compiling that information, I just don't think is worth any reward that you might get. Yeah. So can you? I don't know right now. Should you? Again, depends on the workplace, but I would say probably not.
And I agree that what would we do with that information anyways? The other complicating factor we have is we've got, if the nurses themselves that are employed by us are actually administering vaccine, yes, they will have that information, but that's very confidential. That's they have a code of ethics as well to follow, and so it's not like we can say, well, now give us the list. So we got to be very cautious there as well. And as you said, what to what end, if we do know, what do we do with that? We're not going to really be publicizing it anyways. So I like the direction you're providing today. Yeah.
It's funny, and maybe this is a question to the two of you before we move on to the others, but this whole idea of encouraging our employees to take the vaccine is now a theme, and it makes a lot of sense. Question though, a really interesting one from the chat, what about sort of liability? Vaccine companies are not liable for injury. So if you as an employer are encouraging vaccine use, requesting it even, and the employee is injured from the vaccine, is the employer responsible, or does the employer carry some sort of responsibility for promoting and encouraging and requesting and advocating for something that has ultimately been harmful? George or Aaron, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess as legal, I'll take that bomb that you just put at me, Jason.
It's not my fault. It came from the chat, I promise.
Fair enough. So look, that would be okay. What did the employer do? If there's a line between did you encourage it or did you require it? And of course, where this comes down to is a negligence thing. And given all the scientific studies that have gone out there and said this vaccine is safe and the risk of getting the vaccine is far outweighed by the massive benefit, I cannot see how a court would ever hold an employer liable for encouraging an employee to get the vaccine, or in the most vulnerable workplaces, requiring it. Because again, you're still not saying you have to get it. I guess the worst you could say is you don't have a job if you don't get it. And of course, then it comes down to reasonable accommodation. What else can we get them to do during the pandemic? But as far as someone being hurt by taking the vaccine and suing their employer for negligence, for encouraging or even requiring it at a bona fide occupational requirement, I see the risk of liability to the employer being very little.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aaron, are you walking that line in your environment?
Well, what George, you commented earlier about, where's the line where you push too hard, and I think that's something that we're very conscious of, and we're not pushing it to the point where I think we'd encounter a liability issue. And the other, you'd asked earlier, and I meant to comment on, we are a unionized workplace, and that's a big factor in it as well. We need to work with our unions, and they're good at keeping us in check on when they feel like you're crossing the line on some things, and I appreciate them to raise issues that keep us thinking about what's the right thing to do with our employees and where we're at. An example, when we were looking at what our practices around maintaining social distancing, etc., was a lot of our employees carpool to work, and so we put in basically a policy that says we're not going to tell you can't carpool to work, but if you do and there's a contact through that, we had put in some pay continuance that didn't cause people to have to use their vacation and miss time, but we had said, if you're going to carpool, there's a risk there that that's sort of a line in the sand for us. We were being very careful with that, but we decided that is a line in the sand for us. With vaccinations, I don't see us pushing it so hard that we would put ourselves in any jeopardy, but any employee could challenge us, I guess, that's for sure.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'll let George, I'll let you recover from that bomb. And I warned you that there would be questions off script. I think that was a really good one, but I think your answer was excellent as well. Matthew, let's turn things over to you here for a couple minutes. You provide HR management training and consulting, and you work with a range of different organizations and companies. Give us a sense of what you're seeing out there, and maybe what some of your clients are doing in light of all this.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, and thanks, George and Aaron, for your answers, providing some good additional thought here for myself. But I think I think the vaccine issue brings forward a number of, or continues to bring forward a number of issues that we've faced throughout the pandemic. And, there's hybrid workspaces, employee expectations around work-life balance and cybersecurity and all of these pieces. And as some of you have said, every organization is different, whether you're an IT company, a manufacturing firm, an Indigenous services health organization. We're all going to approach it a little bit differently, but I think within crisis, there's always the opportunity. And throughout the pandemic, we've heard the words pivot, we've heard the words change, and all those types of things. And I think that the vaccine issue is just another opportunity to have these conversations with your employees, really. So if we're not having these conversations, allowing them to weigh in and ask questions, we don't want to have that line where we're just talking behind the management door and trying to figure things out. I think we need to face this head on and have one-on-one conversations, focus groups, pulse surveys, engagement surveys, those kinds of things. So we're continually, getting the input from your employees on how they're feeling about the issue. And I think it's really just a good opportunity to continue to develop our post-pandemic work plan. And I'm not sure that, is the vaccine going to be the biggest issue we've faced in the workplace throughout the pandemic. I'm not necessarily convinced. I think it's just the next thing in line right now that the next hill that we're going to climb, so to speak. So again, I really think, the leading employers, are going to look at this as a continued opportunity to have dialogue with their staff. And you asked a question about how are our clients approaching this? And already this week, we've had one of the communities we work with requests that, they want us to do a bunch of more work there, but they don't want us there unless we're vaccinated. So I think that's something just to, we'll talk about it maybe a little bit later, but there's going to be outside forces that are influencing our encouragement of our team members and to be proactive and of course accept this and look at the risks and look at the benefits as George had said. And I think the data is there and the education and it needs to be said out loud. So Jason, as the Chamber of Commerce, I appreciate you guys bringing this conversation forward so that not only can we have it here as a business community, but in our workplaces and in our homes and all those places, because once we talk about it, it becomes more real and the solutions start to become more apparent.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these are tough conversations to have. I'm just thinking about how I might approach that conversation here in our workplace, and it's the ultimate courageous conversation where it seems like, based on what I'm hearing from George, there's so many landmines here. The eggshells are everywhere. How can what are your thoughts on how to maybe start that conversation or approach that conversation, either with specific employees or the whole group, who ultimately, frankly, are more concerned, I'm guessing, in addition to their health, they're concerned about their job, they're concerned about their status in the organization. You want to make it safe to have this conversation. How can you approach it? How can you maybe kickstart it?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that, we're all facing this for the first time. So, we are, I think that the pandemic is highlighting an opportunity for us to really share the leadership load throughout the organization, and that, it's an opportunity to provide the leadership, supervisor, manager development training, and really prior to the pandemic, like emotional intelligence was really a core competency that leading employers are wanting to see from their people. So I think wanting to, the federal and provincial government have done a good job of providing funding to help properly train supervisors and managers to have these conversations. But I think it comes back to the earlier question is, Jason, your comment on courageous conversations. Yeah, these are tough conversations, but they have to be had, and it can't be one person's responsibility. And sharing that leadership load and starting that conversation. It starts at home. You have it with your family. You can have it at work, and you want to ultimately know your legal rights and obligations as. And not recommending things that go against that, but ultimately we got to be there to listen so that you can hear those concerns, and I guess the comment that Aaron said, we have to be able to listen, and there has to be the obligation on the employee to understand where that line in the sand is and how far how far can we go, and so they can actually see, we can go this far, but we can't go this far. And there's reasons for there's justification for both sides of the coin there. So,
sure. Maybe Aaron, same question sort of to you. You lead a team of internal consultants that advise, management on how to handle these somewhat delicate topics. Are you, what kind of advice are you giving to your leadership around, having the conversation, but not stepping on any of the legal landmines that George has shared with us this morning?
Yeah, well, a lot of times our leaders will look to HR to, hey, can you come in and assist, which I think is a really good thing. So one of the key things I think is to be consistent. You want to have the message at, underground at Rocanville to be the same as in the mill at Lanigan for us, because if employees know what's going on across our company. So I think a lot of it comes from the message coming from Chuck Magro, our CEO, right at the start in our town halls, and that message of being supportive to people to get the vaccine, for instance, but not to be pushing too hard, etc. I think that then filters down to everybody to have that dialogue. But I think there's going to be some I think the phrase crucial conversations around an employee that's, I don't want to work beside so-and-so because I know that they didn't get vaccinated. I think that then all goes back to leaders need education to be able to have that conversation. And a lot of times they need to bring in resources like our nurses to be able to facilitate a conversation and really know the ins and outs. And if we don't have the answers, let's admit we don't know the answer. And this is the wrong time to be making up an answer, just the wrong time. Yeah.
So to just close the loop on this one, George, what do we not want to say in those crucial conversations? What do we absolutely want to leave out of that conversation so that we are not somehow, inappropriately encroaching on anyone's right to privacy or other aspects of their employment?
Yeah, I think you, as we refer to some dangerous people in the workplace, you do not want to be a walking human rights violation. So let's not say things that are contrary to people's right to privacy, contrary to their rights to be treated equal on the grounds of disability, religious belief, medical. So let's have some respect in the workplace, like Aaron and Matthew have talked about. Let's do a lot of listening and have respect for people's views on this. So before an employer comes out and takes some really hard position on something, and again, this is why I'm not, when it comes to COVID-19, asking employers to come up with something in writing because it's so fluid, but be respectful and everything's going to be okay. And if you have any questions, consult with your HR specialist or your lawyer. Always better to ask than to accidentally step on a landmine, because now we have a big problem. So everyone has respect. I think we'll be okay.
So Tara, I mean, that's a big part, I know, of your culture there at Conexus, respect in the workplace. You have a specific focus on workplace culture and employee experience. Same question to you, how best to approach conversations with employees, either individuals or groups who choose not to take the vaccine, but are nevertheless, of course, concerned for their job or status in the organization. What are you thinking in terms of how to approach that?
Thanks for the question, Jason. And I'm sure I'm going to echo much of actually what's been shared by my colleagues on the panel already. But I think there's a few things that I think that are important in this situation is, given the kind of climate of what's been going on over the last year, it's going to be any kind of, any hallmarks of your culture are going to come to the forefront. And one of the things that I think is the companies that are going to fare really well in this realm and engaging in these conversations are the ones that have made wellness and safety within the workplace a core component of their culture. It's going to make it that much easier for them to engage in the discussion. The second piece that I would say is I think it's really important to state the intentions and always make sure that you're focused on the outcome of what you're trying to achieve through these conversations. So I recognize today that what we're talking about is this issue around, a refusal to be vaccinated. What can we ask? What can we not? Really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to achieve is a really healthy and well and safe workplace. not just for your employees, but the customers you serve, the members that come through your door, et cetera. And I think when you remove it off of the person, off of a specific view, off of that, and really keep it focused on the greater good, it makes it a little bit easier to also engage in those conversations. I would say too that, I work at a larger company, as does, Aaron, and we have the benefit and, advantage of being able to have the Georges of the world on speed dial and really well-versed and talented HR teams. And the majority of businesses either don't have access to that or don't have the resources in order to actually do that. I mean, you're a small business and you don't always have that luxury. And what I would say to individuals that are in that situation is, don't be afraid to have the discussion. If you're entering into it with the right intent and you're making sure that you're respectful and you're really going into it with a learner mindset, with the utmost of curiosity in terms of what the climate is with your current workplace or your current employee group, whether that's 4 people, 40 people, or 400. I think there's a lot that can be done. As long as you're aware of, what's going on in the legal environment, you're well-versed in OH&S, you have some degree of knowledge around human rights and keep that at the forefront. And then also too, rather than trying to arrive at a binary, conclusion, there's so many factors to this around the nature of work, the conditions and position of the employee, why they might be feeling the way that they're feeling. And then really too examining what is the real risk to the organization in the event that they choose to or not to, for the environment.
Mm-hmm. Just I'm thinking a little bit about what Matt said earlier about how, one of Morris's clients is eager to engage them on something, but is, would like confirmation that, vaccination is happening at Morris before they come to the community. So Matt, I guess my question to you, you are a small business owner. You have clients that are going to be asking for either confirmation or affirmation that, your team is safe to bring into their workplaces. How are you going to be approaching this as a business owner? Forget for a moment the advice you're giving to other businesses. How do you think you might approach this so that you can mitigate your losses and risk on this?
Well, we've already started approaching it at our team meetings, and I think I've taken the stance of making it public that I'm choosing to get the vaccine. Here's the education out there, and I've tried even to shy against encouraging, but I'm trying to provide the conversation and the dialogue and saying, I'm going to get it. Our clients are asking for it, and here's the reasons I'm getting it. And you really got to do your research on. Is it a good decision for yourself, in your family, and your career, and all of those factors? And I think one of the things that I think about when communicating this in the workplace is, we also have lives outside the workplace, and there's a lot of factors like that I believe will come into play, like a travel passport on requiring that you do disclose that, or that it's a requirement for travel. I think going to arenas, going to concerts, going to music festivals, they may be, help influence the behaviors and choices of those in the workplace. So I think, when we have our team meetings on Monday morning, I think this has been the topic recently, where as a leader, I say, I'm choosing to get it, and here's the reasons why. And here's some information from some leading health organizations that I think you guys should look at, because we're all going to be having to make these types of decisions. And of course, our clients are asking for it. And we're doing a lot of work virtually, like we are here today, in terms of communicating. But at the end of the day, as has been said throughout the panel, each workplace is a little bit different. Some are going to require that close day-to-day contact, which becomes an OH&S issue, and it's going to be more of a contentious issue in some businesses than others. But I guess, Jason, it comes back to having the conversation and being leaders in that conversation.
Yeah, and I really like your suggestion of making it about about you, so, you're making this decision for yourself and for these reasons, and sort of setting the tone at the top rather than sort of prescribing necessarily that others follow suit. I think that's excellent advice. George, what's your crystal ball tell you? Here's another bomb. What does your crystal ball tell you in terms of vaccination passports? We're talking about this, of course, federally in the context of travel. And the Prime Minister has been quite loud about how he has concerns about that for a bunch of good reasons. But more and more employers are, I think, going to be looking for something to be able to verify whether employee A, again, has been vaccinated or not. What's your sense? Do you think that governments or public policymakers are actually going to weigh in on this and actually provide a tool like this? Or is it going to remain in sort of this sort of limbo state that we're currently in, where it's sort of don't ask, don't tell, don't disclose, don't do anything, take it on a case-by-case basis?
Okay, that is definitely more of a political question than a legal one, but I'm going to do my best to answer that. What I see happening is I don't think there can be a vaccine passport within Canada. There's a Charter of the Right and Freedom of Mobility within Canada. So I don't think that between provinces you're going to see a vaccination passport. However, between countries, I do see that coming. Every country is like having their own house. They don't have to let you in, and it's by their rules. So if England or the United States or Mexico or whoever says, you are not coming into our country without a vaccine, showing us a vaccine, then I think that can and will happen. And it's the same thing about, going to an arena. Again, like for example, at an arena, they want to search you out. Do they have a right to search you? Absolutely not. But they can say, as a matter of safety, we're not going to let you in unless you allow a pat-down search. So a private business can say, look, I'm not going to let you in here for as long as you're not discriminating against someone, because we could run into that human rights landmine. But when there's a requirement, they can do that. So to answer your question, again, I don't think it can happen within Canada, saying a vaccine passport, but I do see the Canadian government saying you're not coming in without a vaccine passport. However, there's going to be human rights problems there too. Now, the government of Canada doesn't necessarily owe obligations to outside citizens in coming in. And of course, is there a bona fide occupational, and of course that's occupation, is there a safety requirement? So yeah, a long way of answering your question. I don't think it's going to be within Canada, but I think on external borders, I do think that's coming.
Yeah, okay.
And I do not have any inside information with the government. That was just an absolute prediction on the things I read and observe.
Yeah, but maybe then a same question to Aaron. You have suppliers, vendors, contractors coming to your sites all the time, and I recall in the early days of mask, no mask, there was a lot of conversation about how to treat that situation. What is the approach with visitors to sites or workplaces? Similar to, say, even Matthew's client who's asking for some sort of verification before him and his team come on to their site. What are you doing on that front?
Well, first of all, I was glad you started by asking George the question, and then now you've asked me. It's a tough question. I mean, I know we're being consistent with our contractors, which, there's a number of contractors come our sites, and we're not going to, my understanding is we're not going to treat them differently than our employees. So if we're not requiring, employees to, show any proof of vaccine, et cetera, then we would do the same with our contractors. So I guess what I'd say is we'd ask them to follow the same protocols we do, and they do follow all of our social distancing protocols, et cetera, and mask wearing. And when it comes to vaccine, I would say it's early days to where we're on in this, but I would say we'd have them follow the same protocols we do, which is encourage, and hopefully their employees would take advantage of the opportunity to get vaccinated. But as far as proof, I don't see us asking for proof of, who's been and who hasn't been vaccinated.
Yeah, okay. So Tara, back to you then. All of this, very legitimate concerns about who's vaccinated, who's not, and a lot of delicate issues around that. Let's talk more globally, though, about how these things can lead to divisions between employees. or divisions within a workplace culture. What are your thoughts on sort of approaching all this in a way that doesn't contribute to that? That at the end of the day, we can have these kinds of discussions, but it doesn't lead to deep chasms between employees or in the workplace generally.
Yeah, again, I would echo what has been said around respect within the workplace. One of the things that we observed that happened at the beginning of the pandemic was a division. We actually saw that creeping into certain aspects of our culture and between different working groups for different reasons. For example, we have a number of corporate services teams that work within controlled environments. And then we have a branch network that's open to the public to serve the public. And right off the bat, we immediately saw this, division between how employees felt. And very openly, they said those that were serving the public or those that we refer to as member facing had said, I feel like you're throwing us to the wolves. We have no additional protection. You've sent all our corporate services teams home. They're all working out of the safety of their home. And here we are serving the public. That would be a great example of like a real-time division. And I know that that's not unique to Connexus. I think that's probably happened to a number of companies. And the way that we approach that, as we do with anything where there's a difference of opinion within the workplace, is in that case that I shared, it was really specific to the nature of the roles. We are an essential service in financial services. There is an element where you have to serve and interact with the public. And what we did was we encouraged our leaders to meet one-on-one with all of those employees to have very vulnerable personal conversations about how they were feeling, why they were feeling that way, and how we could potentially actually mitigate some of their concerns and help them get back to a really healthy, comfortable state of mind and make them, and have them feel safe within the workplace. But whenever there's a difference of opinion on anything, we ask people to engage with curiosity, without judgment, and very, very openly with the intent to learn. And I think that that's really important, and it doesn't have to be complicated. One of the things that comes up in all workplaces, and it comes up more and more in larger ones, is this element of fairness. And one of the things that unfortunately I feel like I sometimes sound like a broken record is I can't solve for fair, because what I feel might be fair might be different than Jason's definition, than Aaron's, than George, than Matthew, than, it's just almost impossible to do that. And really rather what we do is we try and focus on what's equitable, not always what's equal. I don't know, I hope that helps or answers your question.
Jason, it's Aaron. Can I just add a comment? Very, very good thoughts, Tara. But what I wanted to add is that there's so much ability now for people to, I'll call it, shame each other on social media. Mm-hmm. And we stress with employees that, what they do off work is still, if it's conduct that's, related to the workplace, that they need to be very cautious with that. And we advise people to, they're entitled to their opinion, but please do it with respect. And I find when people go to social media, that's a very disrespectful place in the world. And I think people just need to, this is just another example where people need to be cautious about that.
Very, very.
That's a great comment, Aaron. I would say that this whole element of cancel culture is becoming so prevalent, and it's just so unhelpful. And we have seen it come through in the pandemic.
What a great discussion. The four of you, let's be honest, this, as I said off the top, is uncharted territory. And for each one of you coming at this from your respective places, I think the insight and ideas and answers you've given us today are just invaluable. So I'm going to turn things over. I think we've exhausted our questions on the chat. I don't have any more questions. Let me turn things over to Trina, and we'll give away a few treats here before we close things off. Trina.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, so as a thank you for joining us today, we have a few draws from some local businesses here, and you've all been entered into our Chamber Master system where it will randomly pick a winner. So I'm going to do that now. All right. So the first draw is for a $50 gift card to Scarlet Cafe in the Sheraton Hotel. And that winner is Diane Parent. So congratulations, Diane. And the next giveaway is a $15 gift card to Spiffy Car Wash. And that lucky winner is Jeff Lindsay. And our last draw today is a Colony Coffee and Tea gift pack. And that winner is Rosemarie Stewart. So congratulations to all of you. You are welcome to stop by the Chamber office and pick up your prize. And now back to you, Jason.
Okay, perfect. Well, congratulations everybody on those little takeaways. Those are always a nice way to start the day. So congratulations to you. And you know, with that, I want to thank Aaron and George and Matthew and Tara for taking the time to weigh into these uncharted waters and you know, splash around a little bit and give us some insight into what they're thinking and feeling about vaccination in the workplace. And of course, also want to thank today's Power Breakfast supporting sponsor, which was Western Economic Diversification. Again, a great partner of ours, and we're very grateful for their support. So thank you for that. We'll give you a little bit, we'll give you some time back today to get on with your work. Hope everyone has a great day. Take care of yourself and those around you, and we'll see you at another Power Breakfast again really soon. Thanks, everybody.